Hello and welcome back to Football League World TV and the weekend preview is upon us eventually. I'm your host Alfie Burns and joining me is Ben Wignall and Marcus. Ben, how are you getting on?
Very good, Alfie. We've got through another international break, and after watching what England did against Hungary, it's a welcome relief to have some Championship football back to talk about.
Yeah, I don't think you're the only person sort of echoing those thoughts. Marcus, how about you? You okay?
Yeah, all good. Thanks. In agreement with Ben. Looking forward to having some fiery action back kicking off tonight in the Championship and in the other two tiers.
Yeah, that leads us into our weekend preview nicely. We're gonna preview the West Brom Birmingham game first up. So as we've just been briefly discussing off air, we've got some more West Brom action this Friday. They seem to be on TV Friday nights more weeks than most. They're hosting Birmingham in a Midlands derby. And Valérien Ismaël's side suffered defeat in their last game, the other side of the international break, losing 1-0 to Stoke. That was their first defeat of the season. You know, Ben, you expecting them to bounce back this evening?
I think so, yeah. Birmingham have been on a pretty poor run recently. I saw them against PNE a few weeks back and didn't really impress me. It was a bit of a poor game from both sides, to be fair, but West Brom, they've definitely got a big chance to get back to winning ways. It was one of the only two, I think, unbeaten runs left in the Championship before the international break, and I certainly think they've got a lot more quality all over the pitch than Birmingham. Not to say that Birmingham don't have any quality. They've got players, game changers like Chong who can make a difference, but I just think under the lights at the Hawthorns, it should be a really, really big chance for Ismaël to get a win under the belts.
Yeah, any West Brom fans tuning in with us early on in the show, just let us know if you're confident about getting back to winning ways. You know, Alex Mort's fit. He's pulled through after a bit of an injury scare over the international break, and Matt Clark's going to be available too at centre back. Marcus, two big bits of team news really for West Brom.
Yeah, huge. Murray's been instrumental for West Brom this season. Of course, Matt Clark is a good boost. Gives Ismaël a bit more of a player at the back that he can trust, I think, in possession a little bit more. Gives them a little bit more variety to their game. I think the loss to Stoke City could actually prove to be a positive for West Brom in the long term. I think sometimes when you're sort of holding on to an unbeaten run where there's been a lot of draws, a loss can release the shackles, particularly going into the international break. It would have given them a bit of food for thought over the last 2 weeks. So yeah, and obviously the boost, as you mentioned, of Mowatt and Clark, I think there'll be no excuses from Ismaël ahead of tonight. Obviously, as Ben mentions, with Birmingham coming in off such a poor run as well.
Yeah, and you're speaking there about West Brom with a lot to mull over the course of the international break. Birmingham have had, you know, an awful lot to mull over in the international break. 4 defeats in their last 5, and they've only scored once in that run. You know, I don't know whether it's too early in the season to say, and too early in his tenure at St Andrews. But Ben, do you feel like Lee Boy's under a little bit of pressure at Birmingham?
I don't think he'll be under too much pressure. Yeah, he obviously came in for Karanka and kind of turned it around at the back end of the season when they looked a bit doomed when they were on a bad run of form. But I think he's well liked by the fans, Boy, for what he does as a player for the club. And it is worrying that the results were on. Obviously, they started the season very well, quite a few clean sheets and a few impressive results. But the performances will be of concern to the fans and probably the board. You probably would have been hoping that Troy Deeney coming in and make more of an impact in his first month. But I just think he will be given quite a bit of time just due to the stance he's got with the club. It's definitely not a good match for him this evening. Obviously, West Brom will be looking to prove a point after their last result. But I don't think, even if he does lose the next few games, I don't think he's going to be ready for the chop just yet.
Birmingham fans, get yourselves in the comments and let us know how you're feeling ahead of tonight's trip to West Brom. Obviously, they've been on a tough run, Marcus. Can you sort of give any positivity for Birmingham fans and make a case for them getting a victory this evening?
I do see some similarities in the style of play between the two sides. I think a lot of stress on the wide players. If you look at Chong and Bella at Birmingham, there's also a lot of stress on the likes of Carlin Grant and Callum Robinson at West Bromwich Albion. In terms of how West Brom are going to play, I think Birmingham are built quite nicely to defend against it. I think Bowyer might be more cautious given their poor form and really look to sit in the game a little bit more than maybe he would when obviously they were flying at the beginning of the season. Back onto Bowyer, I think his stock is fine. I think Birmingham have set the bar really low in recent years because of their relegation battles and things like that. So I think Bowyer will not be worried about his position. I think that should only breathe some confidence into the players. You mentioned that just the one goal for Birmingham in the last 5 games. It was a Troy Deeney penalty as well, so they haven't even scored from open play. But I do see them competing at the Hawthorns tonight. I think it would have been an intense 2 weeks, as you hinted towards. Troy Deeney was keen to point out that he hasn't hit the ground running the way he'd like to in the week. So I think there's plenty of leaders on the training ground, in the dressing room, and I think they can culminate together and produce a better performance than what we've seen the other side of the international break tonight.
Let's get some predictions then, Marcus. We'll stick with you.
I'm going 2-1 West Brom. After talking up Birmingham, I'm still going for a West Brom win. I just think they've got more difference makers, likes of Carlton Grant, Grady Diangana, maybe off the bench, can cause plenty of problems. They can cause, a variety of angles of how they can score goals, and Birmingham at the back have looked a little bit more brittle in the last few weeks. So I think I agree with Ben. It will be a tough evening for Bowyer, even continuing this poor run of form.
And what about you, Ben? Where are you putting your money tonight?
I'm going to go for a similar route. I'm going to go 2-0 West Brom. I just think they'll have a bit too much for Birmingham. He might make a few changes, Bowyer, maybe even a formation change, but I just don't think it'll be enough. And I just think West Brom will be comfortable winners.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for Birmingham getting a point. I'm gonna go for 1-1, but I'm gonna predict that Callum Robinson's gonna continue his fine goal scoring form and get a goal for West Brom as well. So looking ahead to Saturday's action, we've pinpointed the Sheffield United v Stoke game, Saturday 3:00 as a game that be decent to preview actually, because I think that it's quite a good sort of matchup between a side that's come down from the Premier League and then one that's building towards a promotion push in Stoke. So it's interesting from a Sheffield United point of view that they suffered back-to-back defeats heading into the international break, and they were in a bit of a similar situation coming out of the September international break, and they actually hit the ground running with some really good results. Are you expecting more of the same here from Sheffield United, Ben?
Not sure. This is a bit of a tougher assignment than the fixtures they had in, obviously, after the first international break. I think it was Peterborough, Preston, then Hull, and you got 7 points out of that. And obviously, you would have expected that with the squad they've got. And considering the form they were showing, it would have been a real blow to lose back-to-back games before the most recent break. Obviously, they lost to Borough in midweek, and then they went to Bournemouth and lost there, which is obviously they've both got strong squads for this division, and going to Dean Court, it's not an easy task. I think they're well equipped to go again with the squad they've got, but I just think it's a real tough test against a Stoke side who, one, look hard to beat, and two, they've come off a really strong success against West Brom a few weeks ago. So I think it's going to be a lot tougher from this time around. What
do you think, Marcus? Do you think that Sheffield United can come out and hit the ground running again after an international break?
I'm not so sure. I agree with Ben. I think this is a really tough match to start with. Stoke are in a great position. Michael O'Neill always sets his sides up really well defensively, and I think they'll take a lot of belief from that win against West Bromwich Albion on the Friday night just before the international break, because it just sort of confirms that they are good enough to be where they are in the table. They've sort of fallen away, particularly last season. But I think, Stoke is a really tough test. Obviously, Sheffield United had performed really well before those last couple of matches before the international break and started building some confidence under Slavisa Jokanovic. It did look like he's starting to get his ideas across a little bit more. I still think that's the case, but I think Stoke is a really tough task. The likes of Vrancic, Jacob Brown, Sam Surridge in attack, and then just how well they're set up with that back three. I think they'll be very hard to break down, and I can see them keeping a clean sheet, to be honest, at Bramall Lane on Saturday.
We'll stick with you, Marcus, and just move over to Stoke. Obviously, they got a bit of a statement win last time out against West Brom, and they're currently sitting fourth in the table. Do you see this? So, from a Stoke point of view, this is another big opportunity to lay down a statement of intent, really, in the promotion race, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Another newly relegated side and a team that was picked to be inside the playoffs at least this season. I think Stoke this feels like their moment. That they've sort of floated around, struggled with some of their transfer business, had ups and downs since coming down from the Premier League. It has been a roller coaster ride, but I do think this summer transfer window and the consistency and continuity that Michael O'Neill's been able to have at the club is really coming to a point where they are heading in the right direction now. So despite Sheffield United being in the Premier League last season and Stoke finishing in the bottom half of the Championship, I think narrowly, I see them on a par now, if not Stoke just a bit more in the ascendancy. Obviously, Sheffield United are relying a little bit on loanees to inspire them to some better form, but I do think Stoke are looking really solid and at least playoff contenders this season.
What about you, Ben? Are you liking the look of Stoke at the minute?
Yeah, well, I watched them just for the international break. They played Preston off the park pretty much for most of the game, and they were probably lucky not to win that game. And then they went on to beat West Brom. So, yeah, they're just looking very strong all over the park. And obviously, they've still got Tyrese Campbell to come back before his injury last season. He was on fire, so that's another string to the bow when he's fit. I think it's relying a little bit too much on Nick Powell's goals at the minute. Maybe he's playing in a sometimes more advanced role up front with either Jacob Brown or Sam Surridge, and they probably need the goals to come from other avenues as well as Powell. But I think something should click with all the players. Obviously, Surridge just coming for a big fee, and he scored a couple of goals so far. He just needs to prove that he's going to be that 10, 15 goal a season man that can get him into the playoffs and perhaps even the automatic promotion race. But there's a lot to be positive about as a Stoke fan right now. What's
your prediction for this one then, Dan?
After saying that Sheffield United have got a tough task, I'm going to go down the middle. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. No, Stoke have had a few draws this season already. I think it might go that way again, so 1-1.
What about you, Marcus?
It's very, very evenly matched, but I'm going to go for Stoke to nick it 1-0.
I'll go with Sheffield United then. I think it'll be narrow. I think it'll be a good game to watch, but I'll go 2-1 to the Blades. Right, now moving on to Sunday, and probably the standout game in the Championship this weekend is a South Wales derby between Swansea City and Cardiff City. It's a fixture that went under the microscope on Football League World TV yesterday. There was plenty of in-depth sort of look at both sides. So if you missed that episode, please make sure you go back and check it out. We discussed all matter of things on there, but I'll come to you first, Ben. I don't think we've had your thoughts on Swansea this week on the channel. Do you feel like it's finally clicking for Russell Martin?
A little bit, yeah. I don't think they've fully clicked yet, but I think the signs are there. I remember seeing them just a few weeks after he was appointed, and it just wasn't really working to start with. They were still getting used to his methodology and ideas, but they've clearly got they've got the battling qualities they showed against Luton when they came from 3-0 down to draw 3-3. So they've got that side to the game, but they've yet to probably put a team away convincingly. But with Cardiff on the run that they're on, I think this could be a good opportunity to do just that, beat a team by a couple of goals, and it comes against a team that's probably in a bit of a rut confidence-wise, whereas Swansea coming off the back of some decent results, a 1-0 win over Huddersfield as well. It's probably come at the perfect time for them, but just a horrific time for Cardiff to have this game to deal with.
We discussed yesterday on the Under the Microscope show about the atmosphere that the Swansea fans are going to be able to create, at the game, and given that this fixture was behind closed doors last year. Marcus, do you think that home advantage and fans behind them, that Swansea may be favourites going into this one?
I think without home advantage, they probably are favourites. Obviously, at a derby, I feel like sometimes the opposition players are a bit more motivated, and there's a bigger away following than in other matches anyway. So there definitely is more home advantage than there was last season. But I think a derby match does level proceedings a little bit more in terms of how much of an impact the fans are going to have. Sometimes a great atmosphere from the Swansea fans could just spur the Cardiff players on even more. I'm sure, Mick McCarthy will have them right up for this one, knowing that his job could be riding on it potentially. On home advantage, obviously it's back, and Swansea will be hoping that they can just as Ben mentioned, they haven't convincingly put anyone away. It could be one performance that really makes them click, I think, and they all start believing in what Russell Martin is preaching from the dugout. So yeah, I do think Swansea are favourites, but probably not because of the home fans in particular.
Yeah, as you've touched on there, Cardiff are in a horrible, run of form at the moment. They've lost 5 on the bounce, and there's massive pressure building on Mccarthy. It's been a real hot topic on Football League World TV this week with a debate show, and we discussed it on the Under the Microscope show yesterday. But a defeat this weekend for Cardiff would be 6 on the spin. There's already plenty of calls for McCarthy to go. Ben, come to you first. Do you feel like this might be the end of the road for McCarthy if he doesn't get 3 points this weekend?
Yeah, probably. I think when Neil Harris lost his job earlier in the year, I think that was 6 defeats on the spin in the league, which got him the sack. And obviously this had matched that feat. Like I said before, this game probably couldn't have come at a worse time for Cardiff on the back of 5 losses. Could end up motivating the players to get a result, but I just, from what I've seen, I cannot see a way that Cardiff leave the Liberty Stadium with any points. And the fans will be gunning for McCarthy if they do lose. And he'll probably be expecting the sack perhaps if he loses on Sunday, just due to the run of results and the nature of the defeat it'll be. So, yeah, if they don't come out with at least a point, then I can see him probably going by Monday morning.
And what about you, Marcus? Do you echo Ben's thoughts there?
I'm in 2 minds, really. I don't think Cardiff are in danger of getting relegated. Obviously, the league position suggests that they might be. I think Mick McCarthy would be able to, if given time, take them out of this rut. But yeah, losing against your rivals after the run they've been on, it probably would be a surprise to see him in a job on Monday. I think that has to be said.
Right, we'll get your predictions in then. I'll come to you first, Marcus.
I'm going for a 0-0 draw, actually. I think Swansea love having a lot of the ball, and I think Mick McCarthy will be absolutely fine with that, getting Cardiff to dig in. It's going to be an interesting clash of styles, how this one kind of plays out. But yeah, a decent atmosphere. I think all of Cardiff's senior players will be bang up for this one. That back 3 of Flint, Nelson and Sean Morrison will be in fine form and will stand up and be counted for their manager. So I think a battling point for Cardiff, 0-0.
What about you, Ben?
I'm going a different way, 3-1 Swansea. Cardiff will probably score from a set piece like they seem to do a lot, but I just think Swansea will be a bit too good for him. The likes in the Cham, Piro as well. He's been in good form, so yeah, I think Swansea will go away with a 3-1 win.
I better make sure that my prediction matches up to what I said yesterday. So I've gone 1-0 Cardiff. I think that Mick McCarthy is going to come out and get a battling performance out of his side. So moving down into League One on Saturday, we've got Bolton v Wigan. It's 8th hosting 3rd in League One. There's only 4 points between the two sides at the moment, and they've enjoyed decent starts respectively. Ben, are you expecting a close game here?
I think so, yeah. They've both been in decent football. Well, Wigan have been in better form, obviously, as the table suggests. And Bolton have probably had their better performances away from home. Obviously, there's going to be a big crowd there, like there is for this game a lot. Being a local derby, not too far apart. I think Wigan have sold out their away end about 4,000. So I think there's going to be a good atmosphere for both sides. I just think that obviously with Bolton's best form being away from home, it might play into their minds a little bit that Wigan are obviously in good form as well. So just think with Wigan's experience, the team they've got, the signings they made in the summer, I think they've got an edge over Bolton anyway. Obviously with the finances they've got now as well. You've got the likes of James McLean playing for him, Charlie Wykes on his apparent 10 grand a week in League One. He's starting to score a little bit now. I just think they might be a little bit too strong, Wigan, for Bolton on this day. But they've had some impressive performances, Bolton, anyway, against Marcus won't like me saying it, but Charlton away and Ipswich away as well. So it could be a close game. I imagine there might be a few goals in this one.
Yeah, as Ben's touched on there's going to be a huge crowd at Bolton. I think that I've been reading on the extra police that they're having to put on for the game to avoid any trouble, obviously. But it's just a show of the amount of people that are going to be turning up there. As Ben also touched on, Marcus, Bolton's away form has been better than the home form. How do you think a sort of packed out Bolton Stadium is going to, help or hinder Everton's side?
I think it'd be all right considering the opposition. Wigan aren't going to come there and sort of facilitate the way that Bolton play. I think one of the reasons why they've been so effective away from home is because of how devastating they can be in transitions. Obviously, there's a bit more expectation on the home side, so Bolton like to be able to win the ball high up and spring out with players like Dapo Afolayan, so good in the transitions, Anthony Sarcevic. They are a side built to play quickly, move the ball quickly. That's what Ian Everts, one of his main things are at the Trotters. So at home, I can understand. It's still quite a small sample size, I think, to be saying that a team... I don't think we can categorically say that the team's better away or at home, but I think there's a great feeling at the Unibowl at the moment. Obviously, so many years of trouble at Bolton all the way down to League Two and back. I'm sure the home crowd should be able to give them a bit of a lift, and they'll need it after a disappointing loss at Sheffield Wednesday last weekend, where I think they feel that they played well enough to get a result out of the game. But yeah, this is definitely one of the standout matches for me in the whole of the EFL. Could be really exciting. Wigan, probably the most consistent team in League One this season, and Bolton, arguably one of the most exciting going forward. So I think a cracking atmosphere can only add to the occasion.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned there, Ben, that you fancy goals. What's your score prediction?
I fancy Wigan for this one. I just think they've been very solid all season. Aside from that Sheffield Wednesday game at home a few weeks back when he slipped to defeat, I'm going to go for a 3-2 Wigan win.
What about you, Marcus?
I've gone for the two sides to cancel each other out a little bit more. I'm going for a 1-1 draw. I think Wigan are really solid, might be able to take the lead, but then maybe a bit of individual brilliance from Afolayan can get the Wanderers a point.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ben and go for goals, but I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. We're going to move over to your club now, Marcus, and talk about Charlton Athletic. A win last time out against Fleetwood. I don't think it's completely lifted the pressure off Nigel Adkins, and it's never gonna, given the position that Charlton are in the table. But do you see your side being able to build on that win this weekend against Lincoln?
It's going to be tough. Definitely, they can. We've got the players. It's a top 6 squad, in my opinion, where Lincoln have lost players from where they finished in the top 6 last season. But yeah, I do worry. I think the midfield battle could be really crucial. Lincoln have got some nice ball players with Fiorini and Lasse Sorensen in there. Obviously, Anthony Scully is going to be a huge threat from wide areas. Charlton got a great win at Fleetwood, but I think Jonathan Leacoe played a huge hand in both goals. A lovely strike into the far corner and an assist for Jayden Stockley. Whether he can replicate that or whether Lincoln can plan to deal with the threat he poses, I think could play a big part in this one. I know Lincoln's league position is poor, but they've shown in flashes the team that they can be and that they still are. They won 5-1 at Cambridge in one match and really ran riot. Showed that if Michael Appleton can get it right and fire his players up, then they are still the team that finished and was competing for automatic promotion for a lot of last season. So it's going to be difficult. Charlton could go and get a win, but I think personally, from a fan's point of view, and I think probably from Nigel Adkins' point of view, he'd be happy with a point here.
Yeah, you've sort of touched on Lincoln there and where they were last season. I've been reading a little bit on Michael Appleton and how he feels that the squad is maybe 2 or 3 short to get to where they were last season and be competing, with so many top teams in League One. I think it's fair to say that they're maybe not quite the force that they were last season, given the likes of Brennan Johnson, aren't there anymore. Ben, do you sort of share those sentiments and do you see this as a bit of an opportunity for Charlton to pick up another decent win this weekend?
Yeah, definitely think there's an opportunity. Like Lincoln, they've obviously lost, like you said, Brendan Johnson and Morgan Rogers, who were both pretty crucial on loan, and they've replaced them with decent loan players in a row, right? Fiorini from Man City showing glimpses, Lundoilu from Southampton as well needs to probably start scoring a few more. But I just think that Lincoln's recruitment on the whole has been, like, parent-wise, has been pretty good recently. That Regan Poole, Corin Bramall are all, exciting signings for a team like Lincoln, but something's like probably missing. Like Appleton said, they've got a pretty young squad on the whole, but they've shown they can put teams to the sword this season. I know they beat Cambridge 5-1 a few weeks ago away from home, so it just needs one performance, make them click. And they've got players like Scully, who, like Marcus said, is very dangerous, coming in off the left. But for Charlton, I think it is a good opportunity now, obviously off the back of a win at Fleetwood, to get another away win. And I got a sneaky feeling they might do it again narrowly.
Yeah, we'll stick with you then. Let's get your prediction, Ben.
I'm going to go for another 2-1 win. I think Jayden Stockley might get his head on something yet again, like he always seems to do.
What about you, Marcus? Are you confident?
A little bit more pessimistic. I'm going 2-2. It could be a really good game. I think both sides will be desperate for the points to make up for lost time in the league. But yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one to see how it plays out. But I'm going for 2-2.
I'm going to back Charlton this weekend. It'll be narrow again. You know, two pretty evenly matched teams, I would say. But yeah, I'll go 1-0 Charlton. Finally, we're just going to drop down into League Two briefly. We've got Scunthorpe v Forest Green Rovers on Saturday, which is of course bottom versus top. Scunthorpe have shipped 23 goals already this season, and you know Forest Green are motoring along nicely, sitting at the top of the table. And this is a great opportunity for them to put on a show and get another convincing win, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, I feel a bit harsh speaking about Scunthorpe. Last week we covered them against Harrogate, and we all predicted that it'd be a pretty convincing Harrogate win. And obviously, this is going to be another probably clean sweep because it's just looks pretty bleak for Scunthorpe. I think you could tell from the summer they had in the transfer window that this was probably going to head this way. And obviously, it doesn't get any easier for him. Obviously, losing away at Harrogate last week 6-1, and now they've got the table toppers. So obviously, Forest Green got defeated by Swindon last week, which isn't anything to be too disappointed about. Swindon have got a very good team on paper, but they'll see this as the perfect fixture to, get back amongst the goals. They've already scored 6 against, I think it was Crawley earlier in the season. So if you take that into consideration and look what Scunthorpe have been doing, you can only really see perhaps another drubbing on the cards.
I'm going to come to you, Marcus. I want you to give me something positive about Scunthorpe. Can you make a case for them turning the division on its head this weekend?
We're less than a quarter of the way through the season. I'm not sure if you could see that as a positive or a negative as a Scunthorpe fan, the way it's panned out so far. I can see them putting a fight up. You know, they've got Oldham are really poor in League Two at the moment. Colchester United on poor form. So they can definitely make a fist of it. Whether they can do that against Forest Green Rovers is a completely different question. And I agree with Ben, it does look very bleak for them, particularly on Saturday. It's going to be tough. You know, they lost Abuosa and Alex Gilead in the transfer window, which were 2 huge players for them last season, in a season where they were competing towards the bottom end for extended periods of it as well. So, my words of encouragement are there's still plenty of points left to play for, but whether or not they're going to get them is another matter. Something's got to give, I think, at Scunthorpe, or it only looks like it's heading one way at the moment, sadly. Hopefully they can keep it tighter than some other teams have. Obviously, Forest Green drew a blank last weekend, but that wasn't a performance that brought them down in my estimation at all. I thought Lewis Ward had an absolute blinder in goal for Swindon that day. So I think Forest Green will probably be even more determined to make up for dropping points last week against Scunny this weekend.
Let's get your prediction then, Marcus.
I'm going for 3-1 to FGR. I think maybe race into a lead inside the first hour and then Scunny get a consolation goal.
What about you, Ben?
Sorry, Scunthorpe fans, 4-0 to Forest Green. It's going to be very convincing.
Yeah, I'm going to make it a clean sweep. I'm going to go for 3-0 to Forest Green. Finally, we're just going to touch on where our Football League journalists are getting out to this weekend. We've got a busy schedule and plenty of journalists out at games. Fulham v QPR, George Douglas will be there. Forest v Blackpool, George Harvey will be there. Ben, you're getting to Preston v Derby. Just quickly, you looking forward to that one?
Yeah, it's going to be a strange one because there's going to be a lot of fans there. Trevor Hemmings passing our owner earlier in the week. So the club cut the ticket prices down to £5 for everyone. All the money going to charity. So it's going to be we're going to be commemorating him before the game. It's going to be a pretty emotional one. But when the whistle goes, it's going to be a tough game. Derby have been good form considering the squad they've got. considering our form, not really too convinced that we'll get a win, but hopefully the international break's done us a bit of good and we can come away from 3 points.
Go on, I'll get your prediction quickly. Are Preston going to get a win?
I'll be positive for once. Go for a 2-1 win.
Good stuff. Elsewhere, we've got Ned at Millwall v Luton and Toby at Blackburn, v Coventry, and I'm getting to Huddersfield v Hull. So if you are an EFL fan, which I hope you are listening to this show, then please go on Twitter and give us all a follow. It's much appreciated. Right, that concludes our weekend preview and another week on Football League World TV. Thanks to Ben and Marcus for joining me. We'll be back next week with a lot of preview review shows with a packed out midweek schedule in the EFL. So we'll see you again soon and have a good weekend.